The millionaire was sweating cold. He feared losing the most important negotiation of his life. He had no translator. Panic was choking him, until the door opened. A barefoot boy with torn clothes walked in slowly. "I know what they said," he whispered with a firm voice. "I can translate, I know what they speak." The CEO looked at him from top to bottom and almost threw him out. But then the boy spoke, in 7 perfect languages, and in that moment, the most powerful man in Europe understood something that would change his life forever. Like this, if it touched your soul. It is more than a click, it is a silent hug. Comment how you think this story will end, and if you have not subscribed yet, it costs you nothing, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks for being here. The meeting room on the 42nd floor of Technova Global seemed to float over New York. The glass windows framed the city as if it were a painting, but nobody looked outside. The air conditioning buzzed. Low constant, like the murmur before a storm. Matthew Cardoso walked from one end of the room to the other, with steps that echoed against the polished marble. 38 years old, impeccable Italian suit, Swiss watch that was worth more than an apartment. His jaw was tense, knuckles white around the mobile phone. Every second that passed was money that evaporated. The polished walnut table was prepared like an altar, bottles of mineral water with gold labels, leather folders with the company, logo engraved, giant screens showing graphs that went up toward the sky in fluorescent green lines. Everything was ready for the most important moment in the history of the company, except for one detail. The translator had not arrived. Matthew looked at his watch. Again. The 9th time in 2 minutes. "Where is he?" His voice cut the silence like a knife. "Where is the damn translator?" The executives around the table shrank. 5 men and 3 women, all with dark suits and pale expressions. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak. Nobody wanted to be the next to receive the fury of the most feared CEO in America. The executive assistant, Claudia, took a step forward. She was 26 years old and had been at the company for only 8 months. Her hands shook slightly while she held a tablet. "Mr. Cardoso, Mr. Hoffman had a traffic accident on the highway, on the way to the airport. The police confirmed that he is in the hospital. We tried to find replacements, but... What?" Matthew turned with such speed that she took a step back. "We need someone who speaks Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, German, and French with simultaneous fluency. The available professional interpreters only cover 2 or 3 languages. Nobody can do the 6 in a single session, not with this level of negotiation." Matthew closed his eyes. He breathed through his nose, deep, as if trying to hold back something dark that threatened to come out. When he opened his eyes, his voice was dangerously low. "Are you telling me that a company valued at $3 billion depends on one single person?" Claudia swallowed. "Sir, Mr. Hoffman was the only one who—" "I do not want excuses." Matthew slammed the palm of his hand against the table. The water bottles jumped. A folder fell to the floor. "I want solutions." He pointed toward the screens where 2 delegations already appeared, connected from Hong Kong and Dubai, waiting. The serious faces of executives in different time zones, all with the same implied question. "Why are we wasting time?" "We have 28 minutes, Matthew continued, walking again, his voice rising with every word. 28 minutes before these people get up, cancel everything, and take $2 billion to our competition. Do you have an idea of what that means? The stocks crash, the board crucifies me, and you," he pointed to each of the executives, "you become news headlines tomorrow morning." The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut. A German executive tried to speak. "We could postpone the—" "No," Matthew interrupted him. "There is no postponement. This took 18 months of negotiations. If we cancel now, we lose credibility. We lose everything." The door opened suddenly. A security guard poked his head in. He was a big man in a dark blue uniform and an uncomfortable expression. "Mr. Cardoso, sorry, but there is a boy in the hall. He insists he needs to talk to you. He says it is urgent." Matthew turned, with an expression that would have melted steel. "A boy? Now?" His voice was pure poison. "How on earth did a boy get into this building?" The guard shrugged, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. "I do not know, sir, but he—" "Take him out, immediately." "Sir, he says that—" "Take him out!" But before the guard could close the door, a small voice went through the space. It was soft, but it had something strange. It was not shy. It was not begging. It was firm. "Excuse me, I can help." Everyone turned. The boy entered slowly, as if he knew that every step he took was an intrusion. He was about 10 years old, maybe 11. He was thin, with messy dark hair falling over his brown eyes. He wore a faded grey t-shirt with a hole near the neck, jeans that were short for him, and sneakers so worn that the sole was peeling off on one side. A dark green backpack hung from his back, torn in a corner, patched with tape. He was the type of boy people saw in the streets and looked away. The type of boy that passers-by avoided, not because of cruelty, but because of discomfort. But his eyes did not ask for pity. They did not beg. They just looked. Matthew observed him from top to bottom with a mix of disbelief and contempt. "What are you doing here? How did you enter this building?" The boy breathed deep. He seemed to be preparing himself. "My name is Leo," he said, with a calm voice. "I heard you need a translator." A silence of 3 seconds, and then the room exploded in nervous laughs. A Russian executive, Pavel, 50 years old and with a red face, murmured something in his language with a mocking tone. He did not expect anyone to understand. It was a cruel comment about lost children who should be in an orphanage. Leo looked up, and he answered in perfect Russian, with a calm that froze the air. "With all respect, sir, what you just said about me was not polite." Pavel choked on the water he was drinking. The bottle fell from his hand. Water spilled over the walnut table. Everyone stopped laughing. Matthew stopped moving. The air in the room changed, as if someone had opened a door to another world. "You speak Russian?" Matthew asked, and for the first time all morning, his voice did not sound angry. It sounded confused. Leo nodded. "Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, English, French, German, Japanese, Portuguese, Italian." He paused. "My mother was a linguist for the United Nations. She taught me since I was little. I grew up hearing languages. Like other children hear songs." Matthew let out a short laugh, dry, disbelieving. "This is ridiculous." But before he could say anything else, a voice rose from the main screen. It was the Chinese delegation. The leader of the group, an older man with dark glasses and a black suit, spoke in Mandarin with a sharp and impatient tone. "We are waiting. If you do not have a translator, there is no reason to continue this meeting." The executives looked at each other. Silent panic. Nobody knew what to answer. And then Leo spoke. He translated every word in English first for the room, then repeated the phrase in Mandarin toward the screen, keeping the exact tone, the intent, the weight. He did not soften anything. He did not change anything. The Chinese delegation kept silent on the other side. Then the leader asked, still in Mandarin, "Who is translating?" Leo answered in the same language, with respect but without fear. "My name is Leo. I can guarantee that this meeting continues without communication problems." Matthew looked around. He looked at the pale faces of his executives. He looked at the watch. 23 minutes. There was no plan B. There was no choice. He clenched his jaw so hard that the muscles of his neck showed. "All right," he said finally, looking at Leo with cold eyes. "You stay." Then he lowered his voice, and every word sounded like a threat. "But if you ruin this, you leave here the same way you came in." Leo did not look away. He just nodded once. And so began the most important meeting in the history of Technova Global, with a barefoot boy in broken sneakers standing next to the most powerful CEO in America. The delegations began to join the video call, one after another. First, the Japanese arrived. 3 men with identical dark suits, sitting in a room in Tokyo where the morning sun came through vertical windows. Then the Russians, connected from Moscow, with serious faces and looks that seemed to evaluate every gesture. The Arabic representatives appeared from Dubai, with impeccable white robes and unreadable expressions. And finally, the Germans, from Berlin, punctual as Swiss watches. Everyone, without exception, stopped when they saw who was standing next to Matthew Cardoso. A boy, with worn clothes, with a patched backpack. The Japanese representative, Mr. Takahashi, tilted his head slightly toward the camera and asked in Japanese, "Who is the young man who will accompany us today?" Leo answered. Before Matthew could open his mouth, he spoke in Japanese with the same respectful tone, with the same tilt of the head that Mr. Takahashi had used. "My name is Leo, Mr. Takahashi. I will be the interpreter for this meeting. It is an honor to be here." Takahashi blinked. Then he looked at Matthew through the screen. There was something in his expression that was not distrust. It was curiosity. The Arabic leader, Sheikh al-Rashid, spoke in classic Arabic with a tone that sounded more like a test than a question. "A child will translate financial terms of this level," Leo answered in the same dialect without hesitation. "With all respect, Sheikh al-Rashid, I will not translate only words. I will translate intentions. My mother taught me that languages are not just sounds, they are bridges between cultures." The sheikh leaned back in his chair. His eyes narrowed, but not with annoyance, with interest. Matthew watched everything from his place at the head of the table. He said nothing, but his right hand, which had been closed in a fist all morning, relaxed slightly. The meeting began. The topic was complex, a technological merger that would involve infrastructure in 8 countries, millions in investments, intellectual property rights, government regulations, and tight deadlines. Each delegation had specific conditions. Every word mattered, and Leo did not just translate words, he translated worlds. When the Russian executive, Pavel, raised his voice and said something that in English would sound like a threat, Leo translated first to English for Matthew. "Mr. Pavel is expressing his concern about the deadlines. In Russian, the high tone is not aggression, it is cultural emphasis. He is looking for confirmation, not confrontation." Matthew nodded slowly. He looked at Pavel through the screen with a less defensive expression. Leo continued, now speaking directly in Russian toward Pavel. "Mr. Cardoso understands your concern and is prepared to discuss specific contractual guarantees." Pavel relaxed visibly. He nodded. When the Chinese delegation raised objections about data privacy clauses, Leo did not only translate the words, he explained the cultural context. In Chinese business culture, data privacy is not just legal, it is a matter of national honor. What they are asking is not distrust toward you, it is respect toward their own government. Matthew listened. He adjusted his proposal. The deal moved forward. Hour after hour, Leo moved. Between languages like a musician changing instruments, his voice adapted. When he spoke Japanese, his tone was soft, formal, full of respectful pauses. When he spoke Arabic, he used poetic expressions that the sheikhs recognized as signs of education. When he spoke Russian, he was direct but warm. When he spoke Mandarin, he included nuances of hierarchy that the Chinese appreciated. There was no hesitation, there was no error, and something else was happening. The delegations, who at first looked at the boy with skepticism, began to address him directly. They did not wait for Matthew to answer first. They asked Leo. They trusted him. "Leo," Mr. Takahashi said in Japanese, "could you explain to Mr. Cardoso that in Japan, when we keep silent after a proposal, it is not rejection, it is reflection?" Leo translated. Matthew understood. The misunderstanding was avoided. "Leo," Sheikh al-Rashid said in Arabic, "tell Mr. Pavel that when we tilt our head like this, it is not submission. It is recognition of his experience," Leo translated. Pavel smiled for the first time in the whole meeting. 3 hours passed. The contract was reviewed line by line. Each delegation presented its conditions. There were moments of tension, moments where it seemed everything would break. But every time the disagreement threatened to explode, Leo intervened. Not with his own words, only clarifying intentions, softening misunderstandings, building bridges where others saw walls. And finally, when the sun began to go down over New York, the leader of the Chinese delegation spoke. "We are ready to sign." One by one, the representatives gave their approval. The $2 billion contract was sealed. The room of executives exploded in applause. Claudia had tears in her eyes. Pavel raised his water bottle like a toast. The Germans were smiling. The French nodded with approval. Matthew remained still in his chair, looking at Leo. The boy was standing by the screen, with the backpack still on his back, hands in his pockets, a calm look, as if he had just done something completely normal. The delegations began to say goodbye, but before disconnecting, each one addressed Leo directly. Mr. Takahashi tilted his head deeply. "Leo-san, your Japanese is not just correct. It is elegant. Your mother taught you more than words. She taught you respect." Leo tilted his head in response. Thank you, Takahashi-san. It was an honor to serve you. Sheikh al-Rashid spoke with a deep voice. You speak the Arabic of Beirut. That is not learned in books. Where did you learn? Leo lowered his look for a moment. My mother worked 3 years in Lebanon. I was 5 years old. She said that languages are learned with the heart, not with the mind. The sheikh nodded slowly. Your mother was wise. The screens went off one by one. The room was left in silence. Only Matthew and Leo remained. The CEO stood up slowly. He walked toward the boy. The executives watched from the door, not daring to interrupt. Matthew stopped in front of Leo. He looked at him from above. The boy looked up without fear, without pride, just waiting. And then Matthew did something that nobody at Technova Global had ever seen. He knelt down. He was at Leo's height. I judged you, Matthew said, and his voice was not that of the ruthless CEO. It was the voice of a man who had just learned something. I looked at you and I saw old clothes. I saw a lost boy. I saw nothing. He breathed deep. And today, you saved my company. Leo did not smile. He just nodded like someone who has heard hard words all his life and already learned not to expect apologies. Matthew swallowed. Where do you live? Leo hesitated. I do not live in a fixed place. I sleep where I can. There are safe places near the port. Matthew closed his eyes. When he opened them, something in him had changed. You are not going back to sleep in the street. Leo blinked. What? I have an empty apartment in the Upper East Side. It is furnished. It has security. You are going to stay there. Matthew stood up. And you are going to study in the best school in New York. I take care of everything. Leo took a step back. Why would you do that? Matthew looked toward the empty room, toward the table where the biggest deal of his life had been closed, toward the dark screens where powerful men had trusted an invisible boy. Because today you taught me something that no board, no mentor, no university ever taught me. He paused. That the value of a person has nothing to do with their appearance. Leo looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time all day, he let out a small smile. Leo did not sleep that night. The apartment that Matthew had given him was on the 3rd floor of an old restored building in the Upper East Side. It had high windows, polished wood floors, a small but equipped kitchen, and a bed with white sheets that smelled like lavender. It was the cleanest place Leo had been in 2 years. He sat on the edge of the bed, without taking off his shoes, looking at the city lights through the window. The streetlights drew golden lines over the wet pavement. It had rained that afternoon, and the air smelled like damp earth and fresh asphalt. Leo took something out of his backpack, a photograph. It was wrinkled with folded corners, but the image was still clear. A young woman with brown eyes and a wide smile, holding a small boy in her arms. Behind them, a white building with a blue United Nations flag, waving in the wind. Mom, Leo whispered, I did it, like you taught me. He kept the photo with care and lay down on the sheets, without covering himself, looking at the ceiling. He did not know if this would last. He did not know if Matthew would keep his promise. He had learned not to trust too fast, but for one night at least he had a roof. The next morning, Claudia arrived early at the apartment with new clothes, pants, shirts, shoes that were not broken. Leo accepted them in silence, without knowing how to say thank you without sounding desperate. Mr. Cardoso wants to see you in the office, Claudia said with a kind smile. He says there is something important. When Leo entered the boardroom of Technova Global that morning, it was not just Matthew. There were 5 other people sitting around the table. Lawyers, a child psychologist, a social worker, and an older woman with grey hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain. Matthew pointed to a chair. Sit down, Leo. The boy obeyed with hands on his knees, back straight. Matthew spoke with a serious but not cold voice. Yesterday you did something extraordinary. But before I keep what I promised, I need to understand who you really are, not out of distrust, out of responsibility. Leo nodded. The social worker, a woman named Rose, leaned forward. Leo, can you tell us about your mother? The boy breathed deep. Her name was Elena Cardoso. She was a linguist. She worked for the UN for 12 years. She was in Lebanon, Russia, Japan, China, in many places. She always took me with her. She said that languages are not tools. They are keys to understand people. And your father? Rose asked softly. Leo looked down. I did not know him. My mother said he was not ready to be a father. She never spoke badly about him. When did your mother pass away? Leo swallowed. 2 years ago. Pneumonia. We did not have medical insurance at that time. She worked as a freelance after leaving the UN. The hospitals did what they could. The silence in the room was heavy. Matthew rubbed his face with both hands. And since then, I lived with an aunt for 6 months. But she had her own problems. I left. I have been alone since then. The child psychologist, a man with a grey beard named Dr. Mendoza, spoke. Leo, how did you learn all those languages with such precision? Leo looked up. My mother taught me every day. She said that learning languages was not memorizing words. It was understanding how people think. She taught me the dialects, the customs, the expressions that are not in books. When we were in Japan, I went to local schools. In Lebanon, I played with children in the streets. In Russia, my mother took me to markets and made me talk to sellers. He stopped. She said that languages are like music. You have to feel them, not just study them. The older woman with glasses, who until now had not spoken, finally intervened. Her voice was firm but kind. My name is Isabel Rivers. I am the director of the International College of New York. Mr. Cardoso asked me to evaluate your academic level. She took out a folder. Yesterday, while you slept, I reviewed recordings of the meeting. I also spoke with the international delegations. Everyone confirmed that your linguistic command is exceptional. She looked at Matthew. This child does not just speak languages, he lives them. Matthew nodded slowly. Isabel continued, now looking at Leo. If you accept, we offer you a full scholarship in our college. You will receive formal education, psychological support, and you will continue developing your linguistic skills with the best teachers in America. Leo blinked. He did not know what to say. Rose, the social worker, added, We have also located a foster family. They are university professors without children who have been waiting to take in a young person. They were already evaluated. They are good people. Leo looked at Matthew. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. Matthew leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Because yesterday you showed me that I was wrong. For years I built this company being ruthless, judging people by their resume, by their appearance, by their status, and a barefoot boy taught me more about human value in 3 hours than all my mentors in 20 years. He paused. I do not do it for charity, Leo. I do it because it is the right thing, and because you remind me that talent does not wait in luxury offices. It is in the streets, in the invisible ones, in the ones nobody bothers to look at. Leo felt something break inside his chest. It was not sadness. It was relief. I accept, he said with a firm voice, but with one condition. Everyone looked at him with surprise. I want to help other children like me, children who live in the street, who have talents but nobody sees them. Matthew smiled. It was the first genuine smile Leo saw on his face. Done. The International College of New York was a white 4-story building surrounded by gardens kept with geometric precision. There were soccer fields, an Olympic pool, science labs with equipment that Leo had only seen in videos, and a library with high ceilings and shelves that reached the sky. Leo entered through the main door with his new backpack, a gift from Claudia, and clothes that still seemed too elegant for him. The students looked at him as he passed, not with hostility, with curiosity. Isabel Rivers was waiting for him at the entrance with a warm smile. Welcome, Leo. Today we will only do a tour. Tomorrow formal classes begin. She guided him through halls full of natural light, classrooms with interactive boards, music rooms where students practiced violin and piano. Here, Isabel said, stopping in front of a door with a sign that said, Language Room, is where you will spend most of your time. She opened the door. Inside, there were 5 teachers waiting. Each one introduced themselves in their native language. A Japanese teacher, an Arabic teacher, a Russian teacher, a Mandarin teacher, and a German teacher. Leo answered each one in their language, with fluency, with respect. The teachers looked at each other, impressed. This young man, the Arabic teacher said in English, looking at Isabel, does not need basic classes. He needs cultural refinement. Isabel nodded. That is why you are here, Ahmed. The rest of the day went by like a dream from which Leo feared waking up. They assigned him a room. He met his classmates. teenagers from 15 different countries, and ate lunch in a cafeteria where food was plenty, and nobody asked him if he had money to pay. When the day ended, the foster family was waiting for him outside. They were Mr. and Mrs. Martinez. He was a history professor. She taught literature. They were about 50 years old, grey hair, sincere smiles. "Hello, Leo," Mrs. Martinez said. "You can call us Anna and Robert. We want you to feel at home." Leo got in the car. During the way to his new home, he looked through the window at the streets of New York, the same streets where he had slept under bridges, where he had looked for food in bins, where he had been invisible. Now he had a name, he had a place, he had an opportunity. That night, in his new room, painted light blue with a large bed and empty shelves waiting to be filled, Leo took out the photograph of his mother. He placed it on the nightstand. "I am doing it well, Mom," he whispered. "I am using everything you taught me." And for the first time in 2 years, Leo cried, not out of sadness, out of hope. 3 weeks passed. Leo adapted to the college with an ease that surprised everyone. Not only did he stand out in languages, he also showed skills in math, science, and history. His memory was photographic, his capacity for analysis unusual for someone his age. But not everything was perfect. There was a group of students who looked at him with suspicion. They were children of businessmen, diplomats, millionaires. They were used to being the best, the smartest, the most important. And now there was a boy who until a month ago lived in the street, beating them in every evaluation. The leader of the group was a boy named Nick Vega, 15 years old, perfectly combed blonde hair, brand clothes, arrogant attitude. His father was a minority partner of Technova Global. One day during break, Nick approached Leo. "Hey, scholarship boy," he said with a mocking tone. "Is it true that Cardoso found you in the street?" Leo was sitting under a tree reading a Chinese grammar book. He looked up. "Yes," he answered calmly. "It is true." Nick let out a sarcastic laugh. His friends surrounded him like a pack. "How pathetic. Surely you made up a sad story so he would feel pity." Leo closed the book slowly. "I did not make up anything. I offered him help when he needed it. That is all." "Help?" Nick spat the word. "You did not help. You were lucky. Anyone who spoke languages could have done the same." Leo stood up. He was not taller than Nick, but his look was firm. "Then you do it," he said without raising his voice. "Next time your father has an international meeting, offer yourself as a translator. Let's see how long you last." Nick clenched his fists. "Are you challenging me?" "No," answered Leo. "I'm only telling you that speaking languages is not enough. You have to understand people, and that is not bought with money." One of Nick's friends, a German boy named Klaus, intervened. "You know what? My father has a high video call tomorrow with Japanese clients. If you are so good, prove it." Leo looked at him. "Are you asking me to translate?" "I am saying that if you fail, everyone will know that the Technova thing was pure luck." Leo did not answer immediately. He knew it was a trap. He knew they were putting him in a position where any error would be amplified, but he also knew something else, that hiding was not an option. "All right," he said finally. "Tell me where and when." Nick smiled with malice. "Tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Offices of Vega Industries. You better not ruin it, scholarship boy." That night, Leo told everything to Robert and Anna. He expected them to tell him not to go, that it was dangerous, that it could go wrong. But Robert only asked him, "Do you want to do it?" Leo nodded. "Then do it," Anna said, "but not to prove anything to them. Do it because it is what you know how to do, because it is your gift." The next day, Leo arrived at the offices of Vega Industries. It was a smaller building than Technova, but equally elegant. Nick was waiting for him at the reception with a smug smile. "Let's go," he said. "I hope you do not make us look bad." They went up to the 5th floor. In the conference room, Klaus's father, a serious 50-year-old man named Mr. Muller, was preparing documents. "Who is this?" he asked, looking at Leo. "The translator that Klaus recommended," Nick answered with an innocent tone. Mr. Muller frowned. "A child. My name is Leo, sir," Leo said in perfect German. "I can assure you that I will do my best work." Muller blinked, surprised by the command of the language. He looked at his son, then at Leo. "All right, but this meeting is crucial. I cannot allow errors." The video call began. The Japanese clients were executives from a tech company in Osaka. They spoke fast, used technical terms, showed complex graphs. Leo translated every word without hesitating. But in the middle of the meeting, one of the Japanese executives asked a complicated question about tech patents using a specific Kansai dialect, not standard Tokyo Japanese. Mr. Müller did not understand. He looked at Leo with concern. Leo answered in the same dialect, explaining that he knew the region and that the question referred to specific regulations of the Osaka prefecture. The Japanese executive tilted deeply toward the camera. "You spoke like a native of Kansai. Did you live there?" Leo nodded. 6 months when I was 8 years old. My mother worked in Kyoto. I played with children from Osaka every day. The Japanese man smiled for the first time. "Your mother taught you well." The meeting continued without problems. When it ended, Mr. Müller stayed looking at Leo with a mix of wonder and respect. "You are extraordinary," he said simply. Klaus and Nick were pale in the corner of the room. Leo said goodbye with a Japanese bow and left without saying anything else. When he arrived at the college the next day, none of the boys bothered him again. But something more important had happened. Matthew Cardoso received a call from Mr. Müller that same night, asking if Leo would be available for future meetings. "He is not an employee," Matthew answered. "He is a student." "Then he is a student who is worth more than many professionals," Müller said. "Protect him well." Matthew hung up the phone and smiled. Leo had not only proven his talent, he had proven his character. 2 months later, Leo was completely integrated into his new life. His grades were impeccable, his teachers considered him a prodigy, and his classmates had gone from skepticism to admiration. But Leo did not forget where he came from. Every Saturday, he asked permission from Robert and Anna to go to downtown. He told them he was going to the library. And it was true, in part. But after the library, he walked toward a neighborhood called the Lower East Side. There, near the port, was a shelter for homeless people. Leo knew the place well. He had slept outside several times, when the nights were too cold. Now he went in with a bag full of snacks that he bought, with the small allowance Matthew gave him monthly. It was not much, but it was enough to feed 10 or 15 people. One Saturday, while he was giving out food, an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes recognized him. "Leo, is it you?" He looked up. It was Maria, a lady who used to sleep under the same bridge as him. "Hello, Maria," he said with a smile. "But you look different. New clothes. You look healthy." Leo sat next to her on the concrete floor. "I was lucky. Someone gave me an opportunity." Maria looked at him with wet eyes. "I always knew you were special. Your mother would be proud." Leo felt a knot in his throat. "That is why I come here. Because I cannot forget. And because you are my family too." He spent the whole afternoon there, listening to stories, helping to organize donations, talking to children who were now where he had been. And it was then that he had an idea. That night at dinner, Leo spoke with Robert and Anna. "I want to create something," he said. "A program for homeless children who have talents but nobody sees them." Robert looked up from his plate. "What kind of program?" "A place where they can learn languages, computing, art, music, whatever they are good at. But not as charity, as investment, like Matthew invested in me." Anna smiled. "That is a beautiful idea, Leo, but you will need support." "I know. That is why I want to talk to Matthew." The next day, Leo went to Technova Global. Claudia received him with her usual warmth and took him directly to Matthew's office. The CEO was reviewing documents, but seeing Leo, he put everything aside immediately. "Leo, everything good?" "Yes, sir. But I need to ask you for something." Matthew leaned back in his chair. "I am listening." Leo breathed deep and explained his idea. He spoke for 10 minutes without stopping, describing an educational center for homeless youth with specialized programs, dedicated teachers, and real opportunities to change their lives. When he finished, Matthew kept silent. Leo feared he had asked for too much. But then Matthew spoke. "How much do you need?" Leo blinked. "What?" "To start. How much money do you need to make this a reality?" Leo did not have an answer. He had not thought about numbers. Matthew smiled. "Let me make some calls. I have contacts in City Hall, in non-profits, in foundations. If you provide the vision, I provide the resources." "Do you mean it?" "Leo," Matthew leaned forward, "you saved my company. More than that, you taught me to see the world in another way. If this project helps even one child have the chance you had, it will have been worth every dollar invested. Leo felt his eyes fill with tears. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet. This is going to be a lot of work, and you will have to keep studying while you do it. Leo nodded firmly. I can do it. I know, Matthew said. That is why I trust you. 6 months of intense planning passed. Matthew kept his word. He got an empty building in the neighborhood, renovated it completely, hired specialized teachers, and established agreements with local universities. Leo participated in every decision. Although he was only 11 years old, his voice was heard. He knew the needs of homeless children better than any consultant. We need showers and laundry, he insisted in a meeting. Before teaching them languages, they need to feel human. They need dignity. Isabel Rivers, who had joined the project as an educational advisor, nodded. He is right. Education starts with self-esteem. The center was named Elena's House, in honor of Leo's mother. The opening was a small but significant event. There was no press. There were no grand speeches. There were only Matthew, Leo, Robert, Anna, some teachers, social workers, and the first 20 young people selected for the program. Leo stood in front of them. They were boys and girls, between 8 and 16 years old. Some had the same distrustful look he had had. Others seemed scared. Others hopeful. Hello, Leo said with a soft voice. My name is Leo. 8 months ago, I slept in the streets like some of you. I had no home. I had no future. The young people looked at him with attention. But someone gave me an opportunity, not out of pity, because he saw value in me. And now I am here to tell you that you also have value. It does not matter where you slept last night. It does not matter if you have family or not. It matters what you can do, what you can learn, what you can become. He paused. This place is your home now. These people, he pointed to the teachers, are here to help you. But the most important work you have to do yourselves. You have to believe that you deserve something better. A 9-year-old girl raised her hand shyly. Do you believe in us? Leo smiled. With all my heart. The following months were transformative. The young people of Elena's house began to bloom. Some showed talent for languages like Leo. Others stood out in art, programming, math, music, and Leo visited them every week, helping with translations, sharing study techniques, simply listening. One day, one of the boys, a 14-year-old named Adrian, asked him, Leo, how do you manage not to hate the world after everything you went through? Leo thought carefully before answering. My mother taught me something important. She told me that the world is not good or bad. It is people who choose what to be. And I chose not to let the pain turn me into someone bitter. And if you lose everything again? Leo looked around, at the young people studying, at the teachers teaching, at the walls that had been painted with colorful murals by the same kids. I cannot lose everything anymore, he said, because now I have something that nobody can take from me. What? Purpose. 1 year after the meeting that changed his life, Leo received a message on his phone. It was from Claudia. Mr. Takahashi, from Japan, asks if you can call him. He says it is important. Leo had not spoken with the Japanese executive since that meeting, although Takahashi had sent several letters congratulating him on his academic progress. He called that same afternoon. Moshi Moshi, Leo-san. Takahashi's voice sounded warm on the phone. I have a proposal for you. Tell me, Takahashi-san. My company wants to establish a cultural exchange program between Japan and the US. We want talented young people from both countries to learn from each other, and we want you to be our cultural ambassador. Leo almost dropped the phone. Ambassador? Yes. You would come to Tokyo for 2 months next summer. You would give talks about your experience, teach English to Japanese students, and learn about our business culture. All funded, and you can take 2 young people from Elena's house with you. Leo could not believe it. I do not know what to say. Say yes, Takahashi answered, laughing. The world needs more. People like you, Leo-san. People who build bridges instead of walls. Leo accepted. When he told Matthew, the CEO smiled with pride. You are making it, Leo. You are changing the world, one language at a time. I am not doing it alone, Leo answered. You gave me the opportunity. No, Matthew corrected. I only opened a door. You decided to go through it and build something beautiful on the other side. Leo traveled to Japan that summer with 2 young people from Elena's house, Adrian, who had shown an incredible talent for drawing, and a girl named Lucy, 13 years old, who had learned programming in 6 months. It was the first time any of them got on a plane. Tokyo received them with neon lights, old temples, and a warmth that none expected. Takahashi hosted them in a traditional hotel, introduced them to Japanese families, and took them to schools where they shared their stories. Leo gave a talk at the University of Tokyo. The auditorium was full of students, teachers, and businessmen. He spoke in Japanese for 40 minutes, without notes, without hesitating. He told his story: the street, hunger, the opportunity, Elena's house, dreams. And when he finished, the auditorium stood up and applauded for 5 full minutes. A Japanese student approached afterward with tears in her eyes. "I always thought my life was hard because my parents expect too much from me. But you had nothing and built everything. You taught me that complaints have no sense when you can act." Leo smiled at her. "We all have different battles. The important thing is not comparing pains, but finding ways to overcome them." At the end of the trip, Takahashi gave Leo an envelope. "This is from me and from my company, for Elena's house." Leo opened the envelope. It was a check for $50,000. "Mr. Takahashi, this is too much." "No," the old man answered. "It is exactly what it should be. Investing in young people like you and like those kids is investing in the future." Leo tilted his head deeply with tears in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in us. Thank you, Leo-san, for reminding us that value is not in wealth, but in the heart." Leo returned to New York with a new perspective. Elena's house was growing. Now they had 40 young people in the program. 3 had gotten full university scholarships. 2 were working in tech companies as apprentices. 1 had been accepted in an art school in Paris. The project that had started as a dream was turning into a movement. Matthew organized a charity gala to raise additional funds. He invited businessmen, diplomats, artists, and politicians. The press was present. Leo, now 12 years old, was invited to speak. He stood on the stage in front of 300 elegantly dressed people. He wore a new suit, but he still kept the same humility in his look. "Good evening," he began. 2 years ago, I was invisible. People saw me but did not look at me. I was just another homeless boy, another social problem, another statistic." The room was in complete silence, but one man decided to see me, not because I was special, because he decided to change his way of looking. He looked at Matthew, who was sitting in the front row. That decision saved my life, and thanks to him now I can save other lives. Elena's house is not just a building, it is a promise that no child has to stay invisible if there is someone willing to look. He paused. "Tonight I do not ask you for donations out of pity. I ask you for investment in bright futures, in hidden talents, in unpolished diamonds." When he finished, the room exploded in applause. That night, Elena's house raised $200,000. But more important than the money was the change of mindset. Businessmen began to offer internships for young people of the program. Universities established special quotas. Politicians started talking about replicating the model in other cities. Leo had lit a spark, and that spark was turning into fire. One day, 3 years after that first meeting in Technova Global, Matthew received an unexpected call. It was from the Nobel Committee. Leo had been nominated for the International Children's Peace Prize for his work with marginalized children. Matthew hung up the phone and stayed looking through the window for several minutes. Then he called Leo. "I need you to come to the office." Leo arrived that afternoon, now 14 years old. He had grown. His voice was deeper, but his eyes still had the same clarity. "What is happening, Ed?" he asked. Matthew gave him an official document. Leo read it. His eyes opened more and more. Is it real? Completely real. 120 organizations from 60 countries nominated you. Leo, you are a global inspiration." Leo sat down slowly. "I only wanted to help. And you did. Elena's house now has sister programs in 15 countries. You have changed thousands of lives. Do you know how many young people write to you every day, calling you their hero?" Leo shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I am only someone who was lucky." Matthew sat in front of him. "No, Leo, you were not lucky. You had talent, bravery, and a mother who taught you to be human in a world that tries to steal your humanity. That is not luck. It is merit." Leo looked at the photo of his mother that he always carried in his wallet. "She would be proud." "She is," Matthew said, "wherever she is." The award ceremony was in Geneva. 3 months later, Leo traveled with Robert, Anna, Matthew, Claudia, Isabel, and 20 young people from Elena's house. When his name was announced, the auditorium stood up. Leo went up to the stage and received the prize from the hands of the UN Secretary-General. But when they asked him to give a speech, Leo did not talk about himself. He talked about Maria, the homeless lady who had taken care of him in the streets. He talked about Adrian, who now studied architecture. He talked about Lucy, who had created an app to connect shelters with volunteers. He talked about all the invisible ones who had become visible. "This prize is not mine," he said finally. "It is from every person who refused to give up when the world told them they were worth nothing. It is from every adult who decided to look where others turned their view away. And it is from my mother, who taught me that languages are not just words, they are ways of loving." When he finished, even the most serious diplomats had tears in their eyes. 5 years after that meeting in Technova Global, Leo turned 16. Elena's house now was an international network with presence in 40 countries. More than 2,000 young people had gone through the program. 500 had gotten stable jobs. 200 were in universities. And Leo was still the same humble boy who had entered barefoot in a boardroom. One day, Matthew called him to his office. "I have something for you." He gave him an envelope. Leo opened it. Inside were legal documents. He read them with growing wonder. "Are you selling me Technova stocks? I am not selling them to you. I am giving them to you. 5% of the company. Now you are officially a shareholder." Leo shook his head. "I cannot accept this." "Yes, you can, and you will. Because during these 5 years, your work has brought more value to this company than any marketing campaign. Companies from all over the world want to partner with us because they know we care about people. And that is thanks to you. But no buts. Besides, I need someone to keep this company honest when I am no longer here." Leo looked at him with concern. "Are you sick?" Matthew laughed. "No, Leo. I am just a realist. One day I will retire. And when that happens, I want to know that there is someone in this building who will never forget what really matters." Leo felt the weight of those words. "I do not know if I can." "You can, because you already did it. At 10 years old, you saved my company. At 12, you saved lives. At 14, you inspired a generation. Do you really believe you cannot help lead a company?" Leo kept silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "I will do it, but with one condition." Matthew smiled. "You always have conditions. 10% of the company's profits go to social programs, education, housing, health." Matthew stretched out his hand. "Done." They shook hands, and in due moment, both knew that something beautiful had occurred. A ruthless CEO had learned to be human, and an invisible boy had become a light for the world. 3 more years passed. Leo was 19 years old. He was studying international relations at New York University, specializing in conflict resolution and cultural diplomacy. Elena's house had evolved into something bigger, the Elena Cardoso Foundation, with programs in 70 countries, funded by a network of companies committed to social responsibility. One sunny spring day, Matthew and Leo were walking through the Technova building. When they passed in front of the meeting room on the 42nd floor, the same one where everything had started, Matthew stopped in his tracks, as if an invisible memory had hit him. "Do you remember the day you entered here?" Leo smiled, putting his hands in the pockets of his grey suit. "As if it were yesterday, I was terrified. I thought they would drag me out at any moment. I was furious," Matthew admitted with an ironic laugh. "Furious because the world did not turn according to my plans. My translator had had an accident. I was about to lose the biggest contract of my life, and then a barefoot boy appeared who taught me that my plans were not the most important thing." They entered the room. The windows still showed New York, now under the sunset sun that painted the buildings orange and gold. The polished walnut table reflected the light like a mirror. Leo walked to the exact place where he had been standing that afternoon. "Here," he said, pointing. "I was right here, with my torn backpack, my broken shoes, trying not to shake while everyone looked at me as if I were an intruder." Matthew approached and stood next to him. "Do you know what I have learned in these 10 years?" "What?" "That power is not in controlling. It is in empowering. I spent 30 years of my life building an empire, trying to be the strongest, the smartest, the most ruthless. I stepped on the people who got in my way. I measured success only in money and position. He paused, looking through the window. And in 3 hours, a 10-year-old boy showed me that true strength is in lifting others, that real success is measured in lives changed, not in bank figures. Leo looked around the room. On the walls now there were photographs, young people graduating, centers of the foundation in different countries, Matthew and Leo receiving awards for corporate responsibility. "This room changed my life," Leo said with a soft voice. "No," Matthew corrected, turning toward him. "You changed your life. This room was only the stage. Your bravery, your talent, your mother who prepared you for that moment. That is what changed everything." They stayed in silence for a moment, two men in different stages of life, united by a moment that had redefined both. "Matthew," Leo said finally, "I have never asked you something." "What?" "What did you really think when you saw me that day for the first time? The complete truth." Matthew breathed deep. He loosened his tie and sat on the edge of the table. "I thought you were a nuisance. One more problem on the worst day of my life. I saw a dirty boy with broken clothes and assumed you had absolutely nothing to offer. I wanted the guard to take you out immediately." His voice became lower. "I saw poverty and assumed incompetence. I saw youth and assumed inexperience. I saw humble appearance and assumed lack of value." He made a long pause. "And that was the biggest judgment error of my career. Because it turns out that child had more value than all the executives in this room together. More wisdom than I after 30 years in business. More humanity than all my privileged education had ever taught me." Leo sat next to him on the table. "I did not have more value. I only had the opportunity to prove it, and that opportunity you gave." "Exactly," Matthew said, "and that is the lesson I will never forget. That value exists everywhere. In the streets, in the shelters, in the forgotten corners of the cities, in the places where nobody bothers to look. And our responsibility as human beings with resources and power is not to judge who deserves an opportunity. It is to make sure that everyone has the possibility to show what they can do." He turned completely toward Leo, his eyes bright. "You saved me, Leo. Not only my company, me. You saved me from turning into a rich but empty man, a successful but miserable CEO. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to get up every day that goes beyond numbers and shareholder meetings." Leo felt tears forming in his eyes. "You gave me life. You gave me dignity when the world had taken everything from me. You gave me back hope." "No." Matthew put a firm hand on his shoulder. "You already had life, Leo. A beautiful life, full of knowledge and capacity that your mother gave you. I only offered you a space to live it, a stage where you could shine." They looked at each other for a long moment, and then they hugged. A hug that contained 10 years of mutual gratitude, of shared learning, of deep transformation. A hug between a man who had learned to see and a young man who had learned that being seen does not mean abandoning humility. When they separated, Matthew had a mysterious smile. "There is someone here to see you." "Who?" "Come." Matthew guided him toward the corridor. When they opened the door of the largest conference room in the building, Leo stopped in his tracks. There was a group of more than 50 people. He recognized each of them. They were young people who had gone through Eleanor's house and the programs of the foundation. Now they were doctors, engineers, artists, teachers, businessmen, translators, architects. Some had come from other countries. All looked at him with huge smiles and bright eyes. Adrian, now a 32-year-old architect with his own firm, took a step forward. "Leo, we have been working on something for 2 years, in secret, and today we want to show it to you." He gave him a leather folder. Leo opened it with shaking hands. Inside were architectural plans, 3D renders, photographs of a land, signed construction permits. It was a new educational center, bigger than Elena's house, much bigger. It had capacity for 500 students, with fully equipped science labs, art studios with natural light, language rooms with simultaneous translation technology, comfortable dorms, a wide cafeteria, recreation areas, even a small library with thousands of donated books. "We funded it among everyone," explained Lucy, now a software developer with her own successful startup. "All of us who went through Elena's house donated part of our income during these 2 years, and we got corporate sponsors, companies that believed in the vision. Sheikh al-Rashid donated $1 million. Takahashi-san got funds from Japanese companies. Even Pavel, the Russian who doubted you at the beginning, contributed. Tears ran freely down Leo's face now. I cannot believe it. We want to call it Elena International Center. Adrian continued with an excited voice. Because your mother started all this when she taught you that the value of a person is not in what they have, but in what they can give. And because this center will not be only for New York, it will be an international model that other countries can replicate. A young woman named Carmen, now a history teacher, added, it will open its doors next September. We already have a waiting list of 300 young people, and you, Leo, will be the honorary president. Leo could not speak. He hugged them all one by one, crying openly. Each hug was a living testimony of what was possible when people were given not just resources, but belief in their potential. Maria, the older lady who had shared the bridge with Leo years ago, was there too. Now she lived in a small but dignified apartment, worked as a volunteer in Elena's house, helping others who were where she had been. I am so proud of you, my boy, she whispered when she hugged him. I always knew you were going to change the world. That night, on the terrace of the Technova Global building, under a starry sky, an intimate celebration was organized. There were Matthew, Leo, Robert, and Anna, who had been parents for Leo in every sense, Isabel Rivers, Claudia, Mr. Takahashi, who had traveled from Japan specifically for this, Sheikh al-Rashid from Dubai, Pavel from Moscow, representatives of the delegations that had been in that first meeting, and the young people of Elena's house, who now were successful professionals. The lights of New York shone under them like a mantle of terrestrial stars. Matthew raised his glass of champagne, and everyone followed him. 10 years ago, he began with a clear voice, I was a successful but blind man. I saw numbers, but not people. I saw business opportunities, but not opportunities to change lives. And then a brave boy entered my office and taught me the most important lesson I have ever learned. He looked directly at Leo. He taught me that true success is not measured in what you accumulate, but in what you give. Not in how much power you have, but in how much power you share. So I toast to Leo, the boy who taught us to see. Everyone raised their glasses with a chorus of approval, but Leo raised his and with a firm voice said, No, wait, this is not only about me. He stood up, looking at each person present. This is for all the invisible ones of the world, for all the Marias who sleep under bridges, for all the children who have talent but no opportunity, for all the young people who are judged by their appearance instead of their potential. His voice became more passionate. And it is for all of us who have the fortune, the privilege, the responsibility to change that. Because each one of us can do what Matthew did, decide to see, decide to give an opportunity, decide that the value of a person is not in their clothes, their money, or their name. He paused, his look going through the faces lit by the soft lights. Value is in the heart, in the effort, in the capacity to get up every time the world knocks you down. And when we learn to see that truly, when we learn to look beyond surfaces, we discover something extraordinary. He pointed toward the city extended under them. That the biggest talent of the world is not only in luxury offices or in elite universities, it is in the streets, in the shelters, in the forgotten corners, in the invisible ones who wait to be seen. And our mission, our human responsibility, is to make sure that each one of them has the opportunity that I had. He raised his glass higher. So I toast to my mother, Elena, who planted these seeds in me, to Matthew, who gave them ground where to grow, to Robert and Anna, who watered them with love, to Isabel, who gave them light of knowledge, to all of you, who turned them into a garden. Tears shone in the eyes of almost everyone present. And I toast to the future, to the 500 young people who will enter the Elena International Center, to the thousands who will come after, to a world where nobody has to be invisible because we have all learned to see. Everyone raised their glasses and toasted with a crystal sound that echoed in the night. After the toast, while groups formed and conversations flowed, Matthew approached Leo by the railing. There is something more I want to give you, he said, taking an envelope out of the inside pocket of his jacket. Leo opened it. Inside was a letter written by hand, on fine paper. Dear Leo, When I write this, you are 14 years old and have just returned from Japan. But this letter is for the 24-year-old Leo. By then, you will have achieved things that today we can barely imagine. You will have changed lives, built institutions, inspired generations. And I want you to know something important. Never forget the child you were. The brave child who entered barefoot in a room full of executives and offered help when nobody asked him for it. That child is your biggest strength. Success can change people. Power can blind. But you have something that will protect you from that. Memory. Memory of what it is to have nothing. Memory of what it is to be invisible. Keep that memory like a treasure. Use it as a compass. And when one day you find yourself in a position of power, remember to look down, toward the corners, where others do not look. Because there, in those forgotten corners, is the next Leo, the next invisible genius, the next person who will change the world if someone gives them the opportunity. I am proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you. But more important, I hope you are proud of yourself. With eternal admiration, Matthew Cardoso. Leo finished reading with tears running down his cheeks. He folded the letter with care and kept it in his pocket, over his heart. "Thank you," was all he could say. Matthew squeezed his shoulder. "Thank you, Leo, for reminding me what it means to be human," while the lights of New York shone under them and the happy voices of celebration filled the air. Leo knew something with absolute certainty. His mother had planted seeds of languages in him, but more than languages, she had taught him the most important language, the language of humanity, the language of seeing value where others only see lack, the language of building bridges where others build walls. And that language now spoke through hundreds of lives changed, of centers built, of young people transformed, of adults who had learned to look different. Because in the end, that had always been the most profound lesson, that true change does not begin with big speeches or huge investments. It begins with a simple but revolutionary decision, the decision to see, to look truly, to recognize that each person, regardless of their appearance or circumstance, carries inside a universe of potential waiting for the opportunity to shine. And when we take that decision, when we choose to see instead of ignore, we do not only change a life, we change the world.